Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And the people have spoken, and the people have said they want a tutorial or two here while we wait for Out of the Park 23 to come out. So that is what we will get. And today's tutorial will be with regards to the draft and how I go through making the selections that I make. So before we get into anything, the two things that are, I guess a couple of things that I would tell you from a draft perspective. Number one, never draft on need. Yeah, right. I mean, the majority, not even the majority, I would say 99% of all draftees need at least a year or two in the minor leagues before they're gonna make the big league team. So don't draft if you're weak at shortstop. Don't reach on a shortstop just because you need one. Don't reach on a catcher just because you need one. It just doesn't work in baseball like it does in the other sports. The other thing I would tell you is don't pay a ton of attention, especially later on in the draft, to the position. Now, in this particular case, Jordan Lawlar, Khalil Watson, Marcelo Meyer, they're all shortstops. I mean, they're all going to be shortstops when the time comes. But when you get later on in the draft, you see all these shortstops listed here. In high school, especially, and in college too, the best players usually play shortstop or center field. So you're going to see a lot of players that are listed as shortstops that may not necessarily be shortstops. You might find somebody who, like Christian Campbell, is listed as a shortstop. He's not a shortstop with these ratings. More than likely a first baseman, maybe a passable third baseman, but he's not a shortstop. So don't think that there are nothing but shortstops. There are players who can play multiple positions because they were probably the best player on the team, like Cameron Cawley. As a shortstop, he wouldn't be particularly good. He'd be perfectly fine as a second baseman with that arm, but not as a shortstop. So don't pay a ton of attention to the position. Look at their ratings. And then you may find players who can play in the outfield. Like Christian Campbell is probably a better left fielder than he is an infielder. So if you draft someone like Christian Campbell, you draft him as a left fielder rather than an infielder. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. So we're going to pretend that money is no option. So don't pay attention to their demands. Although when you're drafting, you need to make sure your draft demand budget, your draft players within your budget, or you're going to be out players. So that's a fairly obvious thing to keep an eye on. So we're going to just kind of jump ahead and we'll see what's available to us at pick number 4. So Pittsburgh takes Jordan Lawlar. Henry Davis goes 2 to the Rangers. Marcelo Meyer goes 3 to the Tigers. And for me, it's pretty obvious, but we'll take a look at what else is available. Khalil Watson is probably that guy. 18 years old, already a 1.5 stars, so he's pretty well developed. He's great defensively. He's got a lot of speed. I mean, he's a number 3 hitter with these ratings. It's fairly obvious to me that Khalil Watson will be the number 1 pick, but we will take a look and see what else is available. Got Jack Leiter in here, who looks really, really good as well. I guess if I say don't draft on need, but I guess if your minor league system was stocked with elite hitters already, if you already had 5, 6, 7 elite hitters in your minor league systems, you may, in this case, want to go with someone like Jack Leiter. But young pitchers are such a crapshoot. If it's coming down to an elite hitter or elite pitcher for me, I'm going to take the pitcher, or I'm going to take the hitter pretty much every time. So in this case, the decision is easy. We're going to take Khalil Watson. It is my pick, right? Yes. Oops, that's right. I got to click and drag. We're going to take Khalil Watson with our number 1 picks. We will sim ahead to our next pick. And once we get to pick number 2, you're going to see players that are flawed. You're not going to find typically any elite players in round 2. You might find some players who have some really good skills at particular things, but aren't elite. So, right off the bat, I look at Camden Hayslip because of that power, because of his power. And he's probably, again, here's another player that is probably not a center fielder given his ratings, even though he's listed as a center fielder. His range is a little bit light for my liking. I mean, he could play a passable center field, but with that arm, he's probably a left fielder or a right fielder. I really like Camden Hayslip. If you have the time to let him develop. He's going to hit for a lot of home runs. The eye and discipline isn't great, so he's probably going to strike out a bunch. But that looks like a pretty good pick. I mean, he's got multiple well above average skills. The home run power, the gap power are well above average. His base running is above average. His defensive ratings are above average. His contact is slightly above average. His discipline is average, and his avoid K is below average. To me, from looking at what's available here, that's probably the pick. But let's take a look at pitchers. Any starters that really stand out here? Chase Petty looks okay. So one other thing you want to keep an eye on when looking at pitchers. So we're going to draft. I think we're going to draft. Yeah. So what we're going to do. Yeah, who we take, I guess, isn't really important, right? So we're just going to kind of go into. So whether you lean towards the pitcher or the batter doesn't really matter. But one thing that I would tell you regarding pitching, especially someone who you are potentially looking at as a starter, always make sure that they have at least 3 pitches and that one of them isn't a really underdeveloped changeup. So you look at someone like Chase Petty here. He's got 3 pitches. He's got a changeup that's a 10, could potentially be a 30. This changeup will never develop, never. But because he has 3 pitches, he still is a more than passable starter. He's got very good ratings, 3 potentially very good pitches. Where this becomes a concern is if you find a starter who only has 3 pitches and that third one is a really underdeveloped change, because that pitcher will never be anything more really than a reliever, because this changeup, for whatever reason, and out of the park 22 does not develop. That may change in 23, I don't know, but in 22 this changeup won't ever develop, so pretend it's not there. So we're going to take Chase Petty just to take a pitcher. So we go to our third pick, and once we get beyond kind of and look at that, Camden Hayslip is still there with our third pick. So I'm not going to. I'll probably end up taking him because he's that good. But once we get beyond the first round, when you're looking at pitchers, one thing you want to do is you want to go over to, or when you're looking at batters, you want to go over to all players, because you can find pitchers who are better hitters than they are pitchers. Doesn't look like there's a lot here. Chris Benavides is no good. I mean, Raleigh Hector, obviously I wouldn't take him here in the third round, but if you look at his ratings, that's not a bad profile for, I don't know, a second baseman or something like that. He's got good contact, good gap power, good avoid K, and good eye. I mean, that's a leadoff hitter profile if the contact improves a little bit. So he could potentially be a two-way type player. So that's something you want to keep an eye on. But let's say we have gone through all of the moderate, and we'll just take Hayslip. We'll draft ahead a couple here. So we get to the next round. We're in the 4th round now. So at this point, I've taken the best player in the draft, or the best player available for me, which was Khalil Watson. I took a solid but maybe a little bit flawed Chase Petty in the second round. And then in the third round, I took a slightly flawed, needs some development, but has a couple of really high skill rated ratings with my third pick. Once we get to the 4th pick, I'm going to start, again, unless there is a slam dunk in here, unless there's somebody who's got elite power, elite contact, that just somehow slipped through the cracks on either side, whether it's a pitcher or a hitter. So you go back to pitchers. Yeah, there's, nothing here that screams draft me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start sorting by pitch potential. And I love doing this because this is where you're going to find players who, you could go through these names and, maybe Pierce Coppola. Pierce Coppola, 18 years old, he's probably worthy of a 4th pick. Again, needs some room to grow. But 3 really good pitches. Again, doesn't feature that changeup that won't develop. You want to keep an eye down here. He is an impossible science. You are going to have to spend a ton of money on someone like that. But what I like to do from here is I like to go over to pitch potential. And I focus on fastball. And I just start looking. Like, you got Victor Quinn, an 18-year-old with a 96 potential fastball, 61 potential changeup, 78 potential curveball. And he's 18 years old. Great stuff, good movement, decent control. His stamina is okay. But these are the types of players that if you get that random talent bump, like I would probably go with someone like Dennis. Oh, even his stamina is not great. But again, great stuff, really good movement, controls below average, but good fastball, good slider, good changeup. And I go through here and I just try to find the right combination. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to look for the 18-year-olds because the 18-year-olds typically have obviously more room to grow than a 23-year-old. So, I mean, Victor, I like Vic. Oh, no, it's this one. It's Colleran. I like him. Really good stuff, really good movement. And he's only 17 years old, but he already throws 95 to 97, 3 great pitches. And again, ignore the round that we're in. I'm just giving you some tips on how to find players once you've kind of run through the obvious candidates. So there may very well be a pitcher in here that's better than Colleran, but we're going to pretend that there isn't. I'm just trying to give you some other ways to try to find some sort of hidden gem. So we'll take Colleran. From there, one of the other things I like to look at are your defensive ratings. And there are three things that I look at specifically. I look at your catcher ability, and every single draft, I try to find myself a good defensive catcher. Every draft. Because one of them may develop, and catchers are really hard to find in Out of the Park 22. Connor Pavlovi looks like actually, Rene Lastris right here. He looks like the best of the bunch, and this brings up another great point. He's only 17 years old, 2.5 stars, 70 catcher ability, high leader, high work ethic, high intelligence. That tells me that he very well could hit these ratings and maybe even exceed them with the high work ethic and high intelligence. So Rene Lastris. So you find yourself a good quality catcher, and then you go to infield range, and you find yourself an elite defensive infielder. And my reason for this is, again, these defensive ratings typically aren't going to change. The positional ratings will change if you stick them at a position and let them play there, but the defensive ratings won't change, and the offensive ratings could change. So if you can find an elite defensive infielder with high work ethic, you can find yourself a diamond in the rough very, very easily. So I'm not seeing any yet. But Ty Hodge looks pretty good. He's got 2 of the things we're looking for, or really 3 of the things we're looking for. He's got some development time still, so a long way to go for this 18-year-old. He's already very fast. He's good with the bat. He's good on the bases, and he's a good fielder. At worst, Ty Hodge is a really effective backup middle infielder. So we take someone like Ty Hodge. Once we've done that, we go over and we do the same thing with outfield range. We try to find ourselves a very good defensive outfielder with high loyalty and high work ethic. Now, Joel Brewer is already 21. So I don't know how much more development he's got in him, but I like the high work ethic. He can play all 3 outfield, but maybe not right field with that arm, but the range and air, he can already play center field in the major leagues. He's got the speed as well. The bat just needs to come along. So we take a look and see if another one who could play all 3 outfield positions. I might go with someone like Jaquan Smith just because he's still young and has that development, but we keep looking here. Adaptability. See, now Asher Ackridge, I wouldn't take a run at him at this point because he's got a low work ethic. So I want to have somebody who at least doesn't have a negative work ethic kind of on their on their list of attributes. And I'm just going through and looking for somebody. I think, in this particular case, someone like Jaquan Smith, I think, is the move for me. Not quite as good defensively from a range perspective or an error perspective, but he's 19 years old, and there's more room for growth there. He quietly goes about his business. So Smith is somebody that I will take there. So, and I will basically rotate. So then I'll go back to my batting potential, and I will look for a particular stat. So let's look at batting eye. So we have Luke Lito, who is a Out of the Park favorite. Luke Lito, these ratings, he's impossible. So I might not make a move for someone like Lito. What about Alex Mooney? Wow. Okay, he's still in here as... Alex Mooney is somebody I might take a shot at. With the Red Sox, you can do this because you have the money. Alex Mooney is somebody I might take a shot at. He's a first-round talent, and we're in like the 6th round here because he's listed as impossible. At this point, I would take a shot at someone like Alex Mooney because if he's being drafted this late, maybe he doesn't want quite as much, so we'll take Alex Mooney. And again, you look for you at this point you're not going to get any stars. So don't, or at least no stars out of the chute. So look for a particular skill. So Tommy White has got decent power, decent enough gap and eye. As long as his personality didn't have any negative traits, he's somebody I would take a look at. He's probably not a third baseman. He's probably a first baseman, but he's somebody that I would take there. And then you just kind of go through and you look for individual ratings. Now, some of these ratings, again, aren't going to change. Base running, stealing, speed, a lot of those aren't going to change a whole lot. But these offensive ratings could. So again, you search through here and you try to find somebody who has that high work ethic, who's young, and maybe they can develop. And if the bat comes around, you have yourself a young, cheap, kind of developmental type player. Like Michael Robinson is somebody that I like. He's got good outfield ratings. He's got decent infield ratings. He's probably a first baseman. He probably can't play any of the other infield positions, but he's valuable because he's got a lot of flexibility. He's already has positional ratings at 5 different positions, got a ton of speed, good enough with the bat. Michael Robinson. So that's really it. So just don't spend your time on this page. This page doesn't help you. It just tells you their injury proneness, their demand, whether or not they're easily signable, and it gives you some of their basics. Really dig in and look at the positional rating. So from a batting potential, again, outside of the obvious picks, in the first couple of rounds when you're just looking for the best available talent, look for particulars. What does your minor league system need? Do they need power bats? Do they need catchers? Do they need leadoff hitters? Do they need valuable defensive commodities? And then make your picks based off that. Don't pick based off of your major league team. Look for players who have a skill set that you like. And for me, that's catcher ability, that's infield range, outfield range, as well as that individual pitch potential. I have found so many really elite pitchers, not always starters. Sometimes they flame out and they turn into relievers because maybe the stamina isn't there or something like that. But someone like Victor Quinn, if that control develops at all, he becomes a really, really useful bullpen piece. Same thing with Martin Guerre. I mean, at 17 years old, this to me is a no-brainer. But again, here's the kind of thing that you want to pay attention to. That third pitch is a changeup, and it's only a 15. The chances of that ever developing are slim. So he's probably going to end up as a reliever. But if he ends up as a reliever, all of a sudden that velocity kicks up over 100. The stuff bumps up, and you never know what you're going to get at that point. So that's kind of the way I go about drafting. Bryce McGowan. Yeah, see, someone like Bryce McGowan, this gives you a really different view of the pitchers because you're not looking just at their stuff, their control, and their movement. Yeah, these pitch ratings are critical too. And Bryce McGowan is a 24-year-old with 4 potentially really, really good pitches. That could be a solid pick. Of course, he has the low work ethic, which is a knock. So you might want to see if there's another option. Jack Caglione, an 18-year-old. He's kind of one of the featured two-way players in Out of the Park, 22. But you can see that changeup is high enough that tells me that will likely develop. If the third changeup is on a rating of 1 to 100, if it's under 20, it probably won't develop. But in this case, this tells me this changeup probably will develop. He's got a good bat. I mean, this is a two-way player. Absolutely, 100%. He's 18 years old. You make that pick. So I hope this helps, guys. Just a quick insight into how I draft. You start with the obvious. I don't need to sit here and tell you that, if you can find a shortstop who's got, 80 contact and 80 gap power and is a 75 defense, that's a good first round pick. You don't need me to tell you how to do that. But finding some of these other players in your later rounds can make or break your minor league system and give you that depth. So you don't have to go out in the offseason and spend it. So I hope this helps, guys. I appreciate you watching, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Bye-bye.